On this episode of the Haunted Objects Podcast.
We're going to Bermuda.
Let's go.
From deep inside the mysterious archives of the Newkirk Museum of the Paranormal, it's the Haunted Objects Podcast.
Now that we're prepared, now that we have our pina coladas, we're ready to go. We got our Hawaiian shirts on. We've decorated the office here with lots of Bermuda Triangle related stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of like our bathroom, our main bathroom, is very Bermuda Triangle related.
Yeah, you get to poop and look at places where people disappear in the ocean.
Oh, it's where the poop disappears.
It's where your poop goes when you flush it down.
It goes to the Bermuda Triangle.
Did you know that?
That's what this whole episode is about.
Today's episode is all about how when you take a dump, it goes mysteriously to the most bizarre place on Earth, which is this triangle in the middle of the ocean.
I mean, as far as we're concerned, it just disappears. So why not go to the Bermuda Triangle? The Bermuda Triangle is like one of the most long-lasting legends.
Yeah.
It feels nostalgic, doesn't it?
You know what it is? The Bermuda Triangle, I also feel like if you're an 80s kid, it's like it's one of the first weird things that you hear about because that's all that Unsolved Mysteries ever was talking about was the Bermuda Triangle.
Did you have a fear of the Bermuda Triangle when you were a kid?
Not really. I think I, as a child, I don't know. It didn't really scare me very much.
It scared me.
Did it?
Yeah. I mean, the vast open ocean is terrifying.
Yeah.
What about you, Connor? Do you have a fear of the Bermuda Triangle when you were a kid?
Yeah, I just don't like deep water very much either. So, of course, and people disappearing into it. What a nightmare situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Today's episode's not just because we love a good vintage legend. It's because, in this case, before us, we have an actual piece of wreckage from the Bermuda... Wait, where'd it go?
The Bermuda Triangle has earned a chilling reputation as a place where vessels vanish without a trace and aircraft disappear from... Wait, is there supposed to be an artifact here? What's the deal?
Just keep talking,
Okay, For centuries, the enigmatic waters of the Bermuda Triangle have been the focus of intense speculation. Those navigating its waves often report their instruments failing, strange lights in the skies, and a mysterious electric tingle on their skin. Have you found it yet?
Why don't you tell me where it is?
Okay, fine, yeah. Panicked crews send desperate distress calls from the center of the triangle, only to suddenly fall silent. And the debris from their wreckage, if it exists, seems to vanish beneath the waves forever.
How do I keep doing this?
Are these disappearances the result of freak weather patterns, magnetic anomalies, or something far more sinister? Perhaps the most unsettling mysteries are the ones that slip away, even when they were right in front of us. Even when they were right in front of us, Greg.
Whatever. We lost it. I know that sounds like a bit. I know this sounds like a joke. We do a lot of bits on this show.
Yeah.
We actually do not know what happened
It's
to
somewhere in this house.
Let's be real. The piece of wreckage from the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah.
We were all set to talk about this episode, and then the piece, ironically, disappeared. So we're just
still doing the episode. So
we're still doing the episode, and we're gonna get drunk while we do it. So let's strap in, baby. Because we're going to talk about missing planes. We're going to talk about missing ships. We're going to talk about missing people. And you know what we're going to do?
all your favorite things.
We're going to solve this case. And we're going to tell you, we're going to do it under the influence of alcohol. That's how good we are at our jobs. Let's go. I don't think that you could go up to just about anybody, particularly somebody who, grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and say the words Bermuda Triangle to them and have them not respond.
Yeah.
Like, they know what it is, even if they don't know the full details of it.
For a lot of people, I think the Bermuda Triangle is like it's an introduction to the paranormal. It's like the first, as a kid, it was like, maybe our parents thought like, well, this one's kind of okay for kids to hear. But really it's not, because it's like people disappearing into a mysterious triangle in the ocean. That's terrifying.
It's terrifying and incredibly tragic.
Yeah.
But here's the weird thing.
Yeah.
Weird shit keeps happening within the confines of the Bermuda Triangle. If you are unfamiliar with the Bermuda Triangle, it is a space of water in the Atlantic Ocean that is basically the size of Alaska.
Yeah.
It's a massive quadrant, a massive triangular quadrant. It goes from the east coast of Florida around like Miami area, West Palm Beach, all the way down to Bermuda, and then to the island of Puerto Rico.
Yeah,
and
so
it makes a triangle.
It makes a square.
The Bermuda Square doesn't really have quite as much of a ring to
The
it.
Bermuda Rectangle.
I think when I was in Bermuda, I was the Bermuda Square.
Yeah. Good point.
We have been to Bermuda.
We have.
I don't remember much of it.
Well, you and I are both notoriously not outside in the sunshine people.
Hey, we went swimming in a beautiful beach
We did.
in Bermuda, and it was just filled with incredible
Pebbles.
beach glass.
Yeah.
It was really cool. It was one of the most beautiful beaches I've ever been to.
Yeah, it was next to a giant old cemetery that was very cool.
Oh, that was so cool too. Before we get to solving this mystery of the Bermuda Triangle, we need to get into some of the details. It's important to have context for like how mysterious and weird some of these disappearances are. We have gone through, almost 100 different cases. We've narrowed it down to 5 boats and 5 planes.
Hose. Oh, okay.
Yes, 5 boats and 5 hose. We've narrowed it down to 5 boats and 5 planes. And Dana has donned the cruise cam.
Inaugural cruise cam. Does anybody have a thing of champagne you can smash on it?
Yeah, we have to smash the champagne bottle over Dana's head.
Haunted Object's first action camera. In the moment.
Yep.
Great.
So this is an action-packed video episode.
Watch this.
Whoa! If you are not subscribed to the video version of the podcast,
you're insane.
Go to
what
YouTube.
Are you doing?
YouTube.com/Planet Weird.
You're just listening. You need to be watching.
Come on. This is a full service show here.
Yeah.
We're going to start.
You're only getting half of the goods.
With the USS Cyclops.
Yes.
Great name. Great name. This ship, massive ship, 540 feet long. It is considered now, the disappearance of the Cyclops is considered the largest loss of human life in the history of the United States Navy that was not directly related to some kind of a combat mission. Back during World War I, this ship, the Cyclops, it was a transport ship. It wasn't like a combat ship or anything like that. This thing was carrying like ore. It was carrying coal and ore. So it was carrying a lot of raw materials. It departed at Rio de Janeiro on February 22nd, 1918. It stopped at Barbados on the 3rd and 4th of March.
Yeah.
And then on the 9th of March was the last time that this ship was seen. And again, this ship was massive. This is a humongous, it was hauling stuff. So it was huge. This ship disappeared. The last time it was seen was on March 9th in the middle of the ocean. A molasses tanker saw it, reported it. Was in their logs.
What is a molasses tanker? Could you imagine a thing that would require a tanker full of molasses?
Yeah, for real.
It's
a lot of molasses.
That's a lot of molasses.
Well, they were the last people to see it. And then it just completely disappeared off of the map. It never showed up where it was headed to.
Yeah.
After 100 days, they labeled it lost.
They looked for it for 100 days.
They looked for it for 100 days.
And they didn't find anything, not a scrap, nothing. They found no trace of it at all.
The U.S. Navy just considers it a mystery. They labeled it lost, and every single one of the crew dead.
I mean, It's a huge crew, too. We're talking over 300 people.
That's so many people.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, sad. So it completely disappeared until something else happened. There's an update from 1968.
There's this guy named Dean Hawes. He's considered a master Navy diver, and he accidentally descended onto a giant, what he referred to as a large hulk, lying in 180 feet of water, about 40 nautical miles northeast of Cape Charles. he found himself standing on top of a vessel unlike any he had ever seen. He thought this might be the Cyclops. And he came back up. He told his crew about it and said, we've got to go back down. But the weather started to get bad. And so he said, it's okay. We're going to go back. We're going to go back and we're going to find this thing.
Yeah.
They went back. They could not find it. They went to the Navy and they told the Navy, hey, we think we found the Cyclops. They eventually convinced them to go and go look for this thing, but they could not find the exact place, and it has been missing ever since.
So they still haven't found it, and this was just one person that believes that they found it at one point.
And it was in just 180 feet of water.
What?
It's not much. And he was like free diving, I believe, in that area to
and
get
so
down
it was
there.
an accident.
Yeah, completely by accident, stumbled upon it. Couldn't find the spot again. Still a mystery to this day.
Wow. Gone. That's the big one. That's the big one. That's the Cyclops. Okay, this is a good one. This one's one that a lot of people have probably heard of. This was a ship that was believed to already have been cursed when it was lost in the Bermuda Triangle. It's the Mary Celeste.
Yes.
The Mary Celeste, built in 1861,
Yeah.
had a pretty rocky start. On its maiden voyage, the captain caught pneumonia and died. Not a good omen. The ship was also badly damaged on multiple occasions. But for some reason, about 11 years later, November of 1872, they continued to set sail. They went from New York with about almost 2,000 bottles. I think it was like 1,700 bottles of alcohol that was destined for Italy with 10 people on board. That's all they had. They had a captain, Captain Briggs, his wife, and their 2-year-old daughter were on board, as well as some crewmates. It was discovered 2 weeks after setting sail by a passing British ship. They didn't respond to any signals or anything like that.
That is so creepy.
They thought that something was wrong with the ship, so they pull up next to it, they board it, and they find that it is completely empty of people.
Yeah.
Everything else was still there. That valuable cargo,
Yeah.
still on board the Mary Celeste.
This is how Alien starts.
It is.
There's probably a queen on that ship.
There's probably an alien on that ship.
Literally.
If we've learned anything,
Literally.
that's what it is.
Well, we're going to have to pick 2 different spots for this one. Are we not going to?
Well, we are, because this is what ended up happening. It disappeared, and there was a little bit of water in the hold that they found, but not enough to make this thing like dangerous. Not enough for anybody to be concerned about it.
Definitely not enough for like that many people to have disappeared and like jumped ship and left.
One of the boats was missing. One of the long boats was there, but everything else appeared to be in order. It
So
had
all the
6 months.
booze?
All the booze was there.
They didn't even take the booze.
Had 6 months of food and water still on board.
Yeah.
The last log was November 25th, and it was discovered 9 days after that. The ship was still seaworthy. There was some crew from the British ship. They sailed to Gibraltar for an investigation. They found no evidence of foul play there. And despite being considered unlucky, despite being cursed, it went on to be sailed for years and years.
That is so creepy that they were like, well,
But get
still
this.
fine. I mean, we could use this, right? It's fine. It's pretty.
Get this. The reason we can't find it anymore is because one of the later captains, Captain G.C. Parker, in 1885, deliberately sailed it into a reef near Haiti in an attempt to defraud an insurance company.
A tragic beginning and a tragic ending.
Tragic end.
And a tragic middle.
That's
Kind
true.
of,
The
yeah.
entire thing.
The
was
whole
pretty
thing,
cool
all
story.
of it, all of it. Yes. So we're gonna put 2 pins in for
We're
this
going to
one.
put 2 pins on the cruise cam.
We're gonna take a pin and we're gonna put it where it was actually found, which would be about here. But we're gonna have a pin within, because this is where it disappeared.
There we go.
There we go.
So it did happen within the
It
confines
did. You can see.
of the mysterious Bermuda Triangle. We have a couple other little minor ship stories that are still very mysterious. There was a ship called the Rosalie. This one was headed for Havana in 1840. It had a lot of highly valuable cargo on it. There were silks, there were wines, there were fruits, things like that. It was found abandoned in the Sargasso Sea. The ship itself did not disappear, but guess what did? The crew.
Where are they going?
They just disappeared. Never seen again. The ship was intact. The sails were set. Usually wouldn't be the case if this was a case of piracy.
Yeah.
None of that would be there. The captain's papers were all in order. Nothing seemed to be disturbed.
So like with the last one, what you're saying is that nothing was missing. Nothing that should have been missing if pirates
Yep,
or
if it was
someone
pirates.
so none of the goods were missing, just the people were missing.
Just the people. The Patriot, newspaper out of London in 1840, wrote about the vessel. It must have been left within a very few hours. It contained several bales of goods addressed to different merchants in Havana. She is very large, recently built, and called the Rosalie. Of her crew, no intelligence has been received.
Wow.
Gone, without a trace.
Well, I've got it on our map.
You got it on the map.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's another one. This one was a yacht. This is called the Witchcraft. This is a pretty recent one. This is from the 60s.
Yeah.
This is from 1967, December 22nd.
Can you imagine? Can I just say this? Can you imagine what a yacht in the 60s named the Witchcraft has seen? That yacht had seen some shit.
Debaucherous stuff going on the Witchcraft.
That yacht was being held together by cocaine.
It was considered a virtually unsinkable yacht. It was a 23-foot cabin cruiser. It had 2 passengers on it, were all that was on it.
Isn't that what they said about the Titanic, too? I think maybe they should stop calling
saying
things virtually unsinkable. It's probably a bad idea.
Well, the Witchcraft was said to be unsinkable, but here's what happened.
Hold my beer. That's what happened.
Maybe literally.
Yeah.
One of the crew members, too, was an experienced sailor.
Yeah.
The crew totally vanished.
That's really sad,
and
genuinely.
They even contacted the Coast Guard, too. This is what happened. They had everything they needed, everything well stocked. They had flares, they had life jackets, flotation devices, all that good stuff. They were 1 mile out from Miami Beach, and it was around 9 p.m. The captain called the Coast Guard because his yacht snagged on something under the water and needed a tow. He was very calm, didn't indicate that it was a terrible emergency or sinking or anything. They just needed to be reeled back in. Before signing off, the captain told the Coast Guard which buoy he was near, because they have got those buoys marked out there.
Yep.
And that he would set off a flare in order to give his location. The Coast Guard never saw a flare. They never saw it happen. And they got there under 20 minutes. 19 minutes later, the Coast Guard showed up at that buoy and they were gone. And they should have at least seen the ship floating, even if it was going to sink, because it had a flotation device that meant that the hull would at least be floating.
That is so weird.
And
so it's just completely gone.
Disappeared. They should have had some portion of the hull above the water. And a massive search was launched, but no trace of the ship was ever found. The Witchcraft, gone.
Gone.
It was Witchcraft.
Gone but not forgotten. Let's get it on the map.
Let's get it on the map. There we go.
There we go.
Well within the confines of the mysterious Bermuda Triangle. Here we got the last ship we're going to talk about. The Nightmare. This was the Nightmare. In 1972, September of 1972, a diesel-powered boat called the Nightmare had 3 passengers. It experienced an intense power drain out of nowhere. Compasses went bonkers. And then using lights on the shore to track their positioning.
So they were close enough to the shore they could literally see it?
They were close enough to see it. They tried to steer due west at full power, but they reported that there was a, quote, large, dark shape blotting out the stars in the air between the boat and the Matheson hammock a mile or 2 to the west. Despite going full power, the dark space never moved. It was still there, hovering above them. And then they only continued to move to the north. They could not seem to go anywhere, like they were on some kind of a treadmill or something. 2 hours later, they realized they had made no progress, and if anything, had actually moved backwards.
Whoa.
This is the really weird part.
And they were so close.
They were so close.
That's so weird.
Listen to this, though. This is creepy. At one point, they noticed a moving light enter the dark space, sit very still, and then slowly disappear. Not long after that, the dark mass disappeared as well. The compass began to work, the power was back, and the boat moved on as normal. So these guys actually made it out.
Oh, they did.
But their experience may have given us a glimpse into what all of these other ships experienced when they were in the Bermuda Triangle.
Like they were the first people. Well, they were people who were able to tell other people what they saw when they were there.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Isn't that creepy? That's a creepy one. That's from 1972.
Do you think we should add a pin for that?
I think that one needs a pin.
Slightly south from the Witchcraft.
There we go.
There we go.
In the Bermuda Triangle. We could continue on and on and on. There's a ton of different stories. Connor, you were the one who read most of these stories. Were there any ones that stuck out to you as particularly interesting?
I mean, there were multiple stories of animals being the only living beings found on ships. Stories of, there was one boat that had just a dog left behind.
What?
I would like to think that he was not left behind, that it was aliens or something. And, you know, they'll leave the dog here. There was a lot of stories of instrument malfunction. And then a couple that were my favorites were, there were 2 stories that I read of a boat towing another boat behind it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And the boat behind it disappearing
While
into
the
the
tow
fog
is still attached?
Crazy.
while it's towing.
Oh my
That feels like a scene out of a
Still-
movie,
It does.
doesn't it? Out of a film?
So imagine it's like going through the fog and it's got this toe going behind it just into like this soupy like mist and you can't see anything. And then it what? So as they were going, they didn't realize that there was nobody back there.
Oh my God.
That's
and then
scary.
it's gone.
The maybe the most famous early story, because it's in his journals and his books, comes from Christopher Columbus.
No
of
way.
All people. He saw a bright light flashing in the sky, and then the ships were stuck. Couldn't move for a little while. Thing is, the Sargasso Sea is known for having like algae, seaweed material sort of gather on the top. I'll show you guys a picture. And so people think that he was probably caught in that.
So the boat you're saying the boat was stuck in like all of this goopy.
Yeah, so it's basically
Oh,
like
yeah.
so you can
Wow.
see like the journals
Wow.
the journals that Columbus wrote sound very mysterious. Seeing a bright light in the sky and then the ship sort of starting to come to a halt for a few days afterwards. But it's likely that he was probably caught in this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they also apparently tracked a meteor back to that time as well.
Wow.
So it was an odd combination of things.
Yeah.
But that's kind of when, way back in Columbus times,
Let's
when the
be
legend
honest
started,
though.
right?
I know we're not getting into the explanations yet, but let's be honest. Christopher Columbus wasn't historically known for being very good at getting where he's headed.
Smart. Yeah, he's not.
He was not known for getting where he's going.
Christopher Columbus is not known for getting where he's going, and the Sargasso Sea is not known for having clear waters.
Yeah.
Apparently, there's a lot of things they get caught on. And look at this. I got a map of the Sargasso Sea. Really lines up with the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, it's basically
Oh.
right there.
So, could be to blame for some of these stories, but that's just ships, not planes.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to some planes. You ready for
Let's
some planes?
Do it.
When the paranormal lurks in every shadow, and each mysterious artifact hides a ghostly tale, one show dares to uncover the truth. The Haunted Objects Podcast. Now you can wear the mystery. Introducing the official Haunted Objects merchandise. Hats, shirts, pins, and more. All designed by independent artists, manufactured by small businesses, and carrying the undeniable essence of the unexplained. Embrace the legend. Wear the mystery. Visit planetweird.store today.
Okay, let's talk about 5 mysterious disappearing planes. And they have some even crazier stories about what might be happening, particular glimpses into what might actually be happening in the Bermuda Triangle.
Yes.
I think we should start with Bruce Gernon. Connor, you read his book, right?
Yeah. Really interesting read as well. Bruce Gernon, what his story is, it's one particular afternoon, December 4th of 1970. His dad, and his dad's business partner named Chuck Lafayette were traveling between Andros Island and then flying to West Palm Beach. So not a very long flight. It's a flight that Bruce had done many times before. Normally, it takes him about 75 minutes to complete, just a little bit over an hour. And he actually had done it so many times that he knew just how much fuel it takes his plane as well. About 38 gallons of fuel. So what happens? Suddenly, Bruce is flying along, clear skies, bright afternoon, everything's completely fine. And as he's flying along, suddenly a lenticular cloud forms in front of him. As the lenticular cloud, which are the clouds that, remember, sort of look like UFOs, the sort of clouds that appear above Mount Shasta sometimes. What are you doing?
Taking a colada break. Hang on.
He flies toward the lenticular cloud, and as he's flying toward the lenticular cloud, suddenly a tunnel forms in the middle of the lenticular cloud. He flies into the tunnel. So he penetrates the tunnel, and inside...
He does say penetrate a lot in all of his interviews.
Yeah,
he says it like 25 times.
We watched a bunch of videos, and he would not stop using the word penetrate over and over and over again.
He did say it a lot. I mean, he technically did.
I mean, Bruce likes to party.
But he did say penetrate more than I've ever heard anyone say the word penetrate in my entire life.
He penetrates the cloud, and there's this tunnel that's forming. He flies into the tunnel. It's huge. It's like almost 5-10 miles across, he thinks. Suddenly, while he's inside the cloud, things get very dark, but not necessarily stormy. He said there were bright flashes that were appearing. The bright flashes were just white. It wasn't like lightning. It was like suddenly all of their vision would be white. Apparently, his dad's friend who was with him started to like kind of fall half asleep and like slur his words. The dad is angry and scared. Bruce doesn't know what's going on.
So
they're just flying.
Everybody inside of the plane are having like weird, like they're freaking out basically.
And they're all kind of reacting a little bit differently as well.
Okay.
They're flying and really the entirety of their trip inside of the cloud only took a few minutes. So this isn't a super long time. Gets through the cloud and the cloud starts to shrink as they near the end of the cloud. And then it apparently gets to a point where it's like touching the wingtips of the plane that they're in. The cloud, poof, dissipates after they get back from behind it. And then what happens, this is a quote from Bruce. The controller radioed that he had identified an airplane directly over Miami Beach flying due west. I looked at my watch and I saw that we had been flying for less than 34 minutes. We could not have yet reached Miami Beach. We should be approaching the Bimini Islands. I told him he must have identified another airplane because we're 90 miles south of Miami and still looking for Bimini. Then I saw the barrier of Miami Beach down below. He was at Miami Beach. He was so confused because they were 28 minutes ahead of schedule. They arrived 28 minutes earlier than he ever had before. And when they landed, he had 10 gallons of extra fuel. So remember, this trip usually takes 75 minutes, and he did it in 47 minutes. This tiny little plane supposedly traveled 250 miles in 47 minutes. And, some people on the internet have done the math. And if that's the case, if it's going at that speed, the little plane should have been like ripped apart.
Yeah.
Right. Wasn't it like 2,000 miles an hour or some crazy thing like that?
Yes, it was like super fast. And so it didn't make sense for him to travel that distance in that amount of time. So it appeared as though he entered into some sort of time warp cloud.
I believe that Bruce calls it, quote, a time tunnel vortex.
Yeah.
Which is sick.
Yeah.
And his book has like, some other stories from people who've experienced it, not quite as detailed, obviously, as his own. But some of the stories are even people who are just walking into fog and experiencing something like that.
Weird.
There's one where people see it on a golf course and things like that. So his whole thing is this, he's dubbed it electronic fog.
I wonder if that's why people were acting strange, because one of the details that I remember clearly about this is that people's moods they were having radical mood swings and things like that.
Well, yeah.
And I think it's people who, we believe in the electromagnetic spectrum having some kind of an effect on the mind and that causing, potentially, either causing or facilitating some sort of paranormal experience. If that's true and they were moving through some kind of like crazy electric fog, maybe it was affecting their brains too.
Yeah, I mean, like in a lot of these cases, when there are people who have survived, that seems to be the common description afterwards, is it not? That like they seem to act erratically.
Yeah,
they seem to make kind of erratic decisions and do some strange things. So it's kind of, I mean, that's really interesting.
Some of the questions that Bruce asks in his book, he asks, why was the human affected but not the machine?
Yeah.
So no gas was lost. So it seemed as though the traveling didn't take place at all to the airplane.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe they hit some kind of a slipstream? I mean, even if they'd done that, the ship still would have been ripped apart going that fast.
Yeah, that's the way the math works.
Yeah,
out.
because like if you think about it, if it was like some sort of like they're flying into a cloud, or I don't know, maybe the wind is blowing really hard inside of it. I have no idea, but like the idea that maybe they found some way to like travel really fast. This is like Star Trek stuff.
Oh, maybe they accidentally hit a warp drive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's not how that works. I'm going to make Star Trek people mad.
I don't know anything about Star Trek.
Where is Keelan?
Yeah, where is Keelan? She's still doing that Loch Ness Monster thing, isn't she?
The Loch Ness Monster. In the woods, in the lake, in his scuba gear. Keelan's on the hunt, the legend is near. The Loch Ness Monster. The Loch Ness Monster.
Okay.
Well, good luck if you're out there, Keelan.
We're having pina coladas.
Keep up the good work. We're out here working real hard, too.
There you go.
I need more.
So the question is like, are they caught on like this sort of time treadmill? Some of the people who are really into the Bermuda Triangle theories say that maybe they skirted the outside of the phenomena. Like they weren't totally trapped in it. Maybe they were like on the outskirts of whatever happens to these other planes and ships.
Yeah.
So it just jumped them across.
God, that's so cool.
It's a weird story. There's not much you can do to disprove it, honestly, because it just kind of comes down to his details and his flight records. But I'll say this, Bruce is kind of the one guy keeping this phenomena alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like all over the place.
I mean, we watched an
Interviews,
old episode of UFO Hunters with him in it, talking about it. And if you go find that episode, just know that there are some extreme close-ups on some older men.
Weirdly unnecessarily close-up shots. What are you doing? Why are they getting up in everybody's shit? Nobody needs that.
I don't know.
Especially in the bright sunshine, the middle of the afternoon.
Yeah, it was real weird.
That's not close-up lighting. You don't want to get too close in that lighting.
Yeah, let's get Bruce on that map.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. This one's for Bruce. Okay, we're good. Got him.
All right, while Bruce's encounter wasn't necessarily a disappearance, it was just a very weird thing that happened in the Bermuda Triangle, which we think counts. That's, that gives us glimpses at what might be happening.
Well, Bruce has been one of the only people who has returned with information that could be useful. So it's definitely worthy of the map.
And it is a culturally significant encounter because of how much work Bruce has done to try and decipher what happened to him.
Yeah.
Worth being on the map.
Yeah.
This one, though, arguably probably the reason that the Bermuda Triangle has remained as mysterious as it is, there is one particular flight that has gotten more attention than anything else because it is bizarre what happened here. People can't seem to figure out what happened to Flight 19.
What happened to it?
At 2 p.m. on December 5th, 1945, there was a squadron of Avenger torpedo bombers that departed the U.S. Naval Air Station in Fort Lauderdale for a routine training flight. Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor was the leader. He had 2,500 hours and multiple World War II combat tours in the Pacific. This guy was not a spring chicken.
Yeah.
Some of the people, I think you could very easily look at who disappeared in the Triangle, and you see that a lot of the arguments are that these people were inexperienced sailors or flyers. This guy was not it. This guy had some hours under his belt.
Yeah, he was a professional and seasoned.
These guys were supposed to fly east, conducting bombing practice runs at a small reef. Then they were going to turn north, go over the Bahamas, and then fly back to base. The bombing practice went just fine. Everything went according to plan. They turn north, and then they get lost. At around 3:45 p.m., Taylor says, quote, "Cannot see land. We seem to be off course. We cannot be sure where we are. Repeat, cannot see land." They lost contact for about 10 minutes, and then the contact resumed. Quote, "We can't find west. Everything is wrong. We can't be sure of any direction. Everything looks strange, even the ocean." There was another delay. There's some bickering among the flight crew. And then 20 minutes of radio silence. All of a sudden, Taylor's back, bordering on hysteria when he returns.
And these are all the records of what they heard in the naval station.
Yeah, these are all
So
like
these
this.
are actual records.
These are real military records. 20 minutes after they lose contact, he comes back. He is freaked out. And he says, we can't tell where we are. Everything is. Can't make out anything. We think we may be about 225 miles northeast of base. For a few moments, the pilot rambles incoherently before uttering the very last words ever heard from Flight 19. It looks like we are entering white water. We're completely lost.
That's so scary.
So these guys totally gone.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, the military's like, well, we've got to scramble some rescue planes.
Yeah.
So they sent some rescue planes out. They sent 2 of them out to the last known estimated location of Flight 19. And one of those planes goes missing,
So
too.
one of the rescue planes also full of people goes missing without a trace also.
Also goes missing. There were reports of witnesses on land having seen a distant explosion. All in all, 13 men were lost in the rescue plane and 14 men were lost on Flight 19, and nothing was ever found.
That's so scary.
And there's a record of this.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It's so scary. It's so scary because you know that they were just like trying to figure out what was going on. They were just freaking out trying to figure out what's going on.
There's a lot more to the Flight 19 mystery. There's a lot more to that story.
Yeah.
You should check out the Astonishing Legends series on Flight 19. If you have any, if you're as curious about it as we were, check out the Astonishing Legends podcast. They did a fantastic job covering this. They talked to like a ton of people who were involved with this thing.
They have like a Google Earth you can follow along with the flight
that's
path kind of thing
cool.
too. They did well with it. We're not going to do as good as them because we're not dedicating this whole thing to it. There was a multi-episode series. So if you're interested in Flight 19 at all, know that that's how the Bermuda Triangle got started, and they're the ones you want to look to for that.
I mean, they probably weren't drunk when they were doing their podcast either.
Right.
Do you remember at the end of Close Encounters when those guys come off the ship?
Oh, yeah.
It's them.
It's those guys.
It's supposed to be them.
Yeah, and all their flight suits.
Yeah.
Oh,
Isn't
that's
that awesome?
cool.
That's so cool. What a good homage.
It's a great movie.
I think it opens with the planes being like found in the desert too. Remember
Yes,
Wow,
you're
it
right.
does.
Spielberg cemented it even further into the cultural consciousness.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I think
Oh.
Flight 19 is one of the biggest reasons that the Bermuda Triangle mystery has endured as
for
long
sure.
as it has, because it is genuinely mysterious still.
Let's get it on the map.
All right, put this one on the map, Dana.
So this spot that we're picking here is actually the last transmission of Flight 19, which is just about here.
It's a little bit outside the triangle, but I think
Yeah.
it counts, right? Because, I mean, they technically got lost in the triangle.
Yeah,
Isn't
I mean,
that the
it's
idea?
similar to the other one that we
Yeah,
were talking about.
for
where
sure.
that boat went missing inside the triangle and then it was found later outside of it. But you can imagine, it was pushed outside of it.
I think for me, it's like the mystery is, I mean, unless it completely went in a time warp drive, the mystery isn't necessarily where are they? Because it's pretty clear they crashed in the ocean.
Yeah.
The question is, why did he get so confused?
Yeah. Why was he? Yeah. Why
and
was
what
he so
was he
confused?
seeing? What looked so strange? At one point, he thought they were like over the Florida Keys, which is way far away than where they were going to go. So he was trying to get them to go north when they should have been going west. They kind of fought about it a little bit over radio, but he thought they would end up in the Gulf of Mexico if they went west. And so it's this whole complicated thing where they were completely turned around for some reason.
We've got 2 more interesting flights that disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. The first one is the Star Tiger. These were both passenger planes. So these had people on them. This one disappeared. It was scheduled to land in Bermuda at 10:30 p.m. This was on January 29th, 1948.
Yeah.
They had 25 passengers. They had 6 crew. They expected to arrive on schedule. And then all of a sudden, numerous ham radio operators along the Atlantic coast picked up a garbled message with the words spelled out by numbered dots as if someone was working the sender but didn't know Morse code.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. The dots spelled out tiger. There's really no grounds for supposing that the Star Tiger had fallen into the sea because of a radio or mechanical failure. fuel exhaustion, failure to find destination. It was a very genuinely mysterious disappearance. They mounted a huge rescue mission. Nothing. Didn't find anything. And that was a passenger plane.
Wow.
31 people.
That's 31 a lot of
people gone. The Star Ariel was the other one. This one was just a year later. This was in January 17th. They were flying from Bermuda to Jamaica. There were 20 people on board. The passengers were moved from another plane at the last second because of mechanical issues. The Star Ariel wasn't even supposed to fly that day. The captain radioed 55 minutes after takeoff saying they left Bermuda at 8:41 a.m., good visibility, flying at 18,000 feet. They were supposed to make it to Kingston, Jamaica at 2:10 p.m., but a few minutes later at 9:42 a.m., their last communication said they were on course and they'd be changing radio frequencies to communicate with Kingston. They were never seen or heard from again.
Star Ariel.
Star Ariel.
Let's get a spot here.
All right.
Okay.
We got it?
Got it. So this pin is for the Star Tiger, which was heading towards Bermuda. It was going in that direction, so we'll get it right there.
All right, look at that map. That's a lot of people gone, missing, disappeared. A lot of people who survived that had very strange experiences while they were out there.
Some of these are also, people were looking for these people.
Oh, yeah.
And not a trace was found in some of these instances.
Massive searches. And what's weird about these disappearances is the only person who seems to have found any wreckage did it on accident and then couldn't find it again. How weird is that?
That's very weird.
It's also true.
We got another fairly recent one. This one was from 1960. This was March 18th, 1960. This was the F-104C Starfighter. It's an early, really cool, like jet engine type plane.
It looks awesome.
Of the early jet engine planes. We'll have one on screen so you can check it out. It departed Bermuda. It was destined for Spain. It was part of a formation. So there was a squadron of these guys that were moving. One of them in the squadron disappears. And they could not figure out why. The 4 lead planes, they took off seconds apart from each other, except for Poly Alpha 4 had a very minor delay. After takeoff, he radioed that his landing gear did not fully retract, but confirmed shortly after that it retracted. It was all good. Everything was fine. Everything was working as it was supposed to. He was seen taking off and flying into the low-hanging clouds, but the squadron expected to see him join up in formation any second. Never did. Flew into a cloud and was gone.
So that was it. Completely disappeared.
They attempted to radio him. He got no response. No sign on the radar that the plane had gone into the ocean or anything like that. They sent rescue choppers out. They even sent other F-104s that were scrambled to search for it. Thought maybe he flew above the clouds, but they didn't see any signs of it. There were no contrails that would show that he had left the cloud. Last known location was just about 10 miles off of Kindley Airfield. There were shallow waters there too. No debris field.
Wow.
Found nothing. Disappeared without a trace. Out of a squadron.
So I guess we have to kind of consider that the final spot, or at least the last known spot, last seen spot, would be probably right at Bermuda.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's it. Pretty mysterious that these things just fly into the clouds and then they're gone. Or they just sail into the ocean and then the entire crew disappears. That's very weird.
Yeah.
What's happening inside of the Bermuda Triangle? There's a couple other, there's some more recent things. We could talk about some very recent, like as of like even 2023, little Cessnas, a lot of those little airplanes, they've disappeared like crazy out there.
So people still to this day are disappearing in into the Bermuda Triangle?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy. A lot of it is like, well, it could be, it's a lot of small planes island hopping.
Yeah.
And some of them are like what they might call quote unquote pleasure pilots.
Sure.
Oh, sure.
So that's like kind of the skeptical. But the thing is like the numerous, really reading these books, it's just bam, 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 bam. And this is just a smattering of 10 random ones, basically, that we have to talk about here. So could have made a much bigger, more in-depth map, but just to give people an idea what we're talking about.
Wasn't there a guy too? There was a guy kind of recently who saw like a glow around his plane when he was out there?
Totally glowed. Like for 5 minutes, his plane was just enveloped in this glow, shut off all the navigation equipment, and then just faded away. That was a weird one. Another one that happened, this one's more of an urban legend. There's apparently a big giant plane, a 727, that blipped off of radar for 10 minutes, and then when they landed, everybody's watch was 10 minutes behind.
That's so
cool.
weird.
One of the stories too.
But that's more of an urban legend?
It hasn't been officially documented, but it's in several books. So
Wow.
as far as I can tell, don't know if it's real or not, but the stories persist. Planes and boats.
Well, thank you for wearing the cruise cam, Dana.
Yep.
I don't think you have to wear it anymore.
All right, we're going to take...
We've got all of the action shots of you sticking pins in the board.
All right.
We get a lot of stuff in the mail. 9 times out of 10, we don't experience anything. But that last 10% is where things get really interesting. And occasionally, there's 1% that changes the way that we think about haunted objects.
We bind it to the nails, and we release it.
The Unbinding, now available on Blu-ray, exclusively at planetweird.store.
You need a top up?
I'm good.
You need a top up.
Okay.
Now that we've covered the actual, mysterious disappearances, we need to discuss the people who are the reason that we know about these. The reason that the Bermuda Triangle is even named what it is.
Yeah.
The people who wrote these books, who capitalized on these tragic deaths. We need to talk about
these ghouls.
We need to talk about some ghouls. This is the Haunted Objects Podcast, after all. Oh, guess you're going to have to drink all that. Connor, how you doing? You need any more?
No, I'm fine. I'm
All
fine.
right.
It's dripping, and I have expensive equipment, so I put it in a little mug.
So let's talk for a minute about the reason that the mysterious Bermuda Triangle has become a household name. This really starts with a guy named George X. Sand.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
That is a cool name, actually.
George X. Sand. George X. Sand, with a name like that, you might imagine that this guy was like a big writer for a paranormal magazine or just like into spooky weird stuff.
I mean, he could have. He had the name to do it.
No, this guy wrote fishing books.
Oh.
This guy was the
That's
first to really gather all of these different ideas, and it was because he knew the sea. Like he knew stuff about fishing. He liked being out on the ocean, and so he got interested in why so many people were going missing in this particular quadrant. So he was the first person to really lay out that something strange was going on within this part of the water.
So was he the first guy to notice? Wait a second, this is the area. This area here is really genuinely something strange is going on.
Yeah, you're right. This guy George, the George X. Sand.
Yeah.
He was just into oceanic stuff. He was into fishing. He knew the ocean, and he got interested in the fact that so many weird things are going missing there. He was hired by Fate magazine, the preeminent vintage magazine about all things strange. He was hired by Fate magazine to do an article about this. It was called Sea Mystery at Our Back Door.
Cool.
We have it on screen. We'll have it in the show notes if you want to check it out.
It looks awesome.
And he does not call it the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah.
He just talks about mysterious disappearances.
So at this point in time, it wasn't called the Bermuda Triangle. It was just references whatever people were calling it.
Yeah, saying there's something strange happening out here in this part of the ocean.
But George was the first person to really notice that it was that specific area that seemed to have a ton of planes and boats go missing.
It wasn't until a decade later that a guy named Vincent Gaddis wrote for Argosy magazine. He had a cover story, and it doesn't have a spooky cover or anything like that.
Yeah.
Argosy magazine, we've got tons of them in the collection. There's some great spooky covers, right?
They're their covers are pretty iconic. They're pretty crazy.
It was sort of like a men's adventure magazine is how this was billed. There's a cover story, and it's the first time in print that they refer to it as the Bermuda Triangle.
So that was it. That was the first moment they coined the name.
1964. Vincent Gaddis does it. This guy, it's funny, when you read this, it's called Lost in the Bermuda Triangle. It's the article that he wrote. You can tell that he was very clearly influenced by George X. Sand's book.
Sure.
Because there's a quote. The quote says, "During the past 2 decades alone, this sea mystery at our back door," the exact title of George
Would you think he
Sands.
was giving him a little nod, maybe?
Probably. During the past 2 decades alone, the sea mystery at our back door has claimed almost 1,000 lives. In this series of disasters, not one body has been recovered. Within this area, known as the Bermuda Triangle, most of the total vanishments have occurred.
I think in that sentence, you have the naming of it.
You do.
Yeah.
The
That's
name
cool.
of it.
That's
and
like, wow.
I love it that he so confidently says, known as the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah.
We've seen that so many times.
Uh-huh.
I think we see that sometimes with like, you know, a name happens like naturally, and then other people are like, oh, I could do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we can see very clearly who was influenced by who here.
Yeah.
And that is 1964, is where we get the name Bermuda
so
Triangle.
1964, boom.
Yep.
We got the Bermuda Triangle.
Gaddis' article does so well that he ends up writing a book.
Yeah.
He writes a book that's called Invisible Horizons, True
Yes.
Mysteries of the Sea. And he has a few Bermuda stories in there, you know, most notably Flight 19.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's arguably one of the biggest disappearances that's happened in
Yep.
the Bermuda Triangle.
Very weird story.
That's 1965. Here, I think, is where it really starts to get legendary.
Mm-hmm.
In 1968, there was another Argosy magazine
Yeah.
that came out.
Mm-hmm.
This time, the cover,
Does it look a little bit more like their traditional covers?
it ain't so tranquil. It's got
Yeah.
a giant skull on it. I'm holding it up
In a
right now.
triangle.
In a triangle.
That's crazy.
And the cover story is the deadly Bermuda Triangle. Who will be its next victim? This is the fun part about this. You'll notice in the very first mention of it in Argosy, it's just one of many different stories that are in there.
Yeah.
There is not a single other story on the cover of this.
Only the Bermuda
It is
Triangle.
only the Bermuda Triangle. UFO, flying saucer, natural phenomenon. What monster claimed the sub-Scorpion? 10 ships, 12 airplanes, and over 1,000 people. It's the only thing on the cover of this
I love
magazine.
that they called it a monster too.
Yeah.
Like that maybe they were alluding to the fact that there was like a sea monster in there.
August of 1968. There you go. This is where it really starts to get spooky. And after that, it is nothing but the paranormal.
Yeah,
That is the only thing people are talking about with the Bermuda Triangle.
That's it.
In 1969, there was a book called Limbo of the Lost by John Wallace Spencer. It was all about the Bermuda Triangle. In 1971, the documentary The Devil's Triangle is released.
Yeah.
If you're watching the video podcast, you'll see this is one of the posters that's hanging in our Bermuda Triangle themed bathroom upstairs. This is one of my favorite covers. It was a documentary that featured Vincent Price. King Crimson did the music. There's a $10,000 reward that's listed on the cover. $10,000 reward to any viewer of the film who can solve the mystery of the Devil's Triangle. But you got to buy a ticket. You got to go to the viewing. You got to buy a ticket, and they'll give you
pretty
the
good
information
marketing.
if you can solve the mystery. Do you think they're still honoring that?
I would hope so, because maybe we're going to do it today.
I think we're going to get $10,000 today.
Is there a phone number we can call?
There's a sticker.
Did they have email in 1970?
It must have been kind of scary, because one of the things that they used to do back in the day is they would have these stickers that they would stick on the posters, and this sticker says recommended for adult entertainment.
Yeah, they didn't want to bring
So they
kids
didn't
in
want
there.
kids there because they probably was scared of them too much.
Traumatize the shit out of them.
Yeah, but this cover's so beautiful. It says the greatest true life mystery of the century. And there are tons of planes and ships. You can see them all going down
Getting
into the water.
sucked into the water.
Underneath the triangle, the Devil's Triangle. So now we know that the Bermuda Triangle is officially spooky. It is officially a scary paranormal thing. People are talking about UFOs. They're talking about sea monsters.
Yeah.
They're making documentaries with Vincent Price.
So it's in the world now, and the world is loving it, is
They're
what you're
loving
telling
it.
me.
And it's around this time. It was 1972 that there was a couple big names that stepped up to try and figure out what was going on with the Bermuda Triangle. One of which we have spoken quite a bit about on this podcast in the past.
Yeah.
I think we should throw it to Connor for this one. Connor?
Yeah, tossing it over to me.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to need you guys to be quiet for a little bit, because it is time for another edition of Connor's Corner.
It's time for Connor's Corner. All Connor, all the time.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Connor's Corner. That's the podcast that happens during the Haunted Objects podcast. What's going on today is we are talking about Mr. Ivan Sanderson and the 12 Devil's Gateways around the world. All right. What happens with Ivan Sanderson? There were a ton of mysterious disappearances, and our boy Ivan, who again coined the term cryptozoology, decided to go through and map them out. the very cool thing is that he basically found, hey, the Bermuda Triangle is interesting, but there's also this area directly below Japan.
Well,
that's
real quick,
also
the cool
interesting.
thing about Ivan T. Sanderson.
No, not just me.
Connor's Corner. No Greg, no Dana, just Connor. Let's roll.
That's right. We don't have any other guests here on Connor's Corner. It's just me here. Okay. The thing is, he mapped these out and said, wait a second, this is all on the same latitude of the Earth. And if that's the case, maybe there's other locations that map up as well. And so what he did is he split the Earth into all of these different lines, matched up the latitude and longitude, and he found that there were these lozenge-shaped areas around planet Earth that had mysterious disappearances occurring. The Bermuda Triangle was the one that was the most popular because it was the one that was the most traveled. All of these points, and I'll show a map on screen, all of these points met together as the little vertices of an icosahedron. For those at home, that's a 20-sided die. That's right, 20 sides of the Earth split into these little areas. Ivan Sanderson's 12 Devil's Gateways around the world. That's what we're covering on this episode of Connor's Corner. Thanks again, guys, for stopping by. We'll see you next time. It's the podcast that happens during the Haunted Objects podcast. Once again, goodbye.
All aboard the convoy. The conveyor. You've been conned. Oh, yeah.
It's so good. It's so good.
Can you repeat that? I wasn't listening.
Yeah, what?
Connor, how long have you had that one in the bag?
Yeah, I did. I use the company card to hire a radio guy? Yeah, I did.
That is the best use of the company card I think I have ever heard. So keep it up.
Please.
More Connor's Corner. You can let us know in the comments. Do you want more of Connor's Corner?
Does Connor's Corner need to be a reoccurring corner?
No Greg, no Dana. That's fine. I'm sitting here drinking a pina colada.
I know. We just get to
you can go ahead and do it.
We get to watch a podcast while we make a podcast. That's the best kind of way to do a podcast. It is. It's like Inception. It was like a dream.
Conception.
Directed by Christopher Nolan.
Oh, very good. I really enjoyed Connor's Corner.
Connor's Corner is my new favorite podcast.
What? 1 or 2 more seasons before that has its own spinoff?
Yeah.
We give the people what they want.
Give the people what they want.
Do it.
Thank you for that, Connor. Mm-hmm. That was wonderful. Ivan T. Sanderson.
The Sandman.
The Sandman.
That was a good coverage podcast that happens within a podcast. Ivan Sanderson made it pretty popular, and then another guy stepped in and made it even bigger.
Arguably, I mean, if you're a person who reads like old paranormal books, if you like vintage paperbacks, things like that, there is no doubt in my mind that you have run across a book by this gentleman named Charles Berlitz. Mm-hmm. Charles Berlitz in 1974. He writes a book that it is the book about the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, I think that we decided last night that it was the Amityville of the Sea.
Yeah, it's the Amityville of the Sea.
I think that's what we decided.
I think he wrote several books about the Bermuda Triangle. He writes a book called The Bermuda Triangle. Mm-hmm. This is it right here. We got a first edition copy. Let me wipe the pina colada off of it. The Bermuda Triangle by Charles Berlitz. An incredible saga of unexplained disappearances. This book was translated into 22 different languages.
Dang!
It sold 10 million copies.
Yeah, people were really liking this one.
Crazy. So
is this the moment when like the Bermuda Triangle just becomes like a household name? Like everyone's talking about it. It's like the biggest thing.
Mid-70s is when it really took off.
That makes sense.
Because of this book.
Yeah.
It was like nerdy weirdos who were into the Bermuda Triangle until then. And then 1974, here it comes. Boom.
Well, the Bermuda Triangle is like this thing where like most of our grandparents probably would know what it is.
Oh, sure.
You know, so it's interesting to see that it had a moment where it kind of became super popular and it just sort of remained very relevant.
Right.
Like, you know, people continue to talk about it. And this is sort of the moment when it does that, is what you're saying.
Yes, and one of the things that I think nobody ever talks about, and this is the crazy thing about Charles Berlitz. People should pay a little more attention to who this guy was.
Yeah.
Because Charles Berlitz was a fascinating dude. Mm-hmm. This is the thing that we haven't seen like anywhere else in any of the research that anybody's done, is who Charles Berlitz actually was. And he has one of the weirdest, craziest upbringings. as a kid.
Yeah, this is so weird.
Charles Berlitz was raised in a household in which, by his father's orders, every single person in the house spoke to little Chuck in a different language.
In a totally different language.
And so he grew up thinking that every person had their own specific individual language. This is true, by the way. This sounds crazy.
That's crazy.
But this is true. He grew up thinking every specific person had their own language.
And you had to learn it.
And you
so
had to learn it to communicate
with
with them because everyone in his household spoke differently to him.
them. Yeah.
He thought until he was a lot older, he was like, why don't I have my own language?
Yeah.
He was bummed out about the fact that he didn't have his own specific language and everyone else in the world did.
He spoke like fluent languages as a toddler, did he not? Like multiple languages?
By the time he was 3, he was speaking 4 languages.
That's wild.
By the time that he was an adult, he was speaking 8 languages
Just fluently. That's wild.
The reason for this is because his grandfather was Maximilian Berlitz, who founded the Berlitz language schools.
Okay.
And so it was very important to them that this kid ended up speaking as
very
many
confused.
languages. Yes, it's true. He, the way that this worked was his dad spoke to him in German, his grandfather spoke to him in Russian, and his nanny spoke to him in Spanish. And he had his bedroom walls were lined with like just, you know, posters of like animals and things and like, you know, different kind of like vegetables and stuff like that. And he would regularly be visited by different people who in their own language would ask him, what is this?
Oh, wow.
And get him to say it in multiple different languages with multiple different people. He said to the Washington Post in 1982, I thought each person had their own particular way of speaking. Since I'd hear my mother switch to German when she spoke to my grandfather, I thought everyone had to learn everyone else's way of speaking to communicate. And then over the years, he oversaw production of textbooks and pocket dictionaries. He said, I tend to think speaking only one language is like having a big house and only living in one room.
Well, it's kind of nice too, because really what he's saying is that every person has a different way to talk to them. And even if what he was describing was like actual language, there's something sweet about it that you come to someone on their level and try to communicate with them, which is cute.
He told the United Press International in 1988, every language is like adding another outlook. Language just adds to a person's knowledge and enjoyment of our planet. It's actually a pretty great outlook.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I think that's how he made his fortune too. He made pocket dictionaries and textbooks and things like that.
That makes total sense.
I don't know. His grandfather, some questionable techniques.
I mean,
but it seemed to pay off for him.
The weird thing about Charles Berlitz, we keep finding this out as we do this podcast, as we dig deeper into some of the stories and individuals that we love, we start to find out, they worked in military intelligence. He worked in Army intelligence for 13 years. He went to Yale and was in Army intelligence and then got interested in the paranormal. Kind of funny how so many people who work in military intelligence end up getting into the paranormal, writing books about it, making documentaries about it. What's the deal with that?
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different theories.
Well, he became interested in the Bermuda Triangle in 1945 while serving as an investigative officer attached to the Army Air Forces when 5 Navy torpedo bombers disappeared in the area.
I was drinking my drink. I'm sorry.
He himself was he was part of one of those missing stories. So he sees this happen. He's part of the investigation team that goes out to look for these bombers.
Yeah,
and
so he's really engaged.
Yeah. And then he realizes, wait, something bigger is happening here. And so he starts to put together some theories. He wrote this book, the Bermuda Triangle, to appeal to a wider group of people than just like the weirdo paranormal books.
Interesting. Okay.
So he made it to be like a very mainstream thing. His explanations for what could be happening are kind of all over the place. He makes some pretty wild leaps about some things, but he's a very entertaining writer.
Yeah.
And because of that, this book absolutely blows up.
Yeah.
In 1979, there was a Charles Berlitz documentary that was made, and it was all about the Bermuda Triangle. There's some of it that's kind of acted. There's some of it that's acted out.
We should also point out that Charles did have a bitchin' mustache.
Oh, this dude had a good stash.
The kind of stash you want on a guy who's doing this kind of research.
Oh, for sure.
I
love
love it.
Is that a trustworthy mustache or a non-trustworthy mustache?
It's A sea captain's mustache.
Kind of is, yeah.
That's true. You trust a sea captain. So you watched this documentary, right?
I thought I did.
I love this story.
But then I didn't. So I just looked it up. I looked it up on my TV, and first one that popped up, of course, it's called the Bermuda Triangle. How many documentaries are there called the Bermuda Triangle?
Sure.
Well, it turns out there is, I got it confused with the horror movie that came out in 1978, a year before the Charles Berlitz one. So it was of the time period. And I spent like the first 15 minutes watching a horror movie, like thinking that it was the Charles Berlitz documentary. And in the first few minutes, this little girl picks up a scary doll from the ocean. And then all these birds like come and attack and like kill a couple men like on the ship. And then a guy goes down to fix the ship and he gets all bloodied in the ship's motor and all that. And I was like, that didn't happen.
I love that you watched this thing. There's a haunted doll in this story.
Like,
That's cool.
I didn't read about paranormal birds bringing a haunted doll up out of the ocean.
Talking about it was terrible.
Oh, it's bad. We watched a little bit of it before the recording.
It looked like a real stinker. I'm not going to lie.
And then at the ending, the ship was actually gone the whole time. Not to spoil it. We will link to it. The
They
description.
do blame the haunted doll on the Bermuda Triangle, right?
I do love that Connor didn't want to spoil a movie that's like 45 years old. Yeah. No spoilers.
That you don't want to watch.
No, don't watch. I think the whole thing is overdubbed somehow.
Yes,
Oh,
it does look like
feel
it.
that
It's
way, yeah.
really
Like,
weird.
there was like loud boat motors happening
Yeah,
the
they had
whole
bad
time.
audio.
Yeah.
They were like, what?
Seagulls just flying around all over the place.
Do it over again. So yeah, not to be confused with the Bermuda Triangle of the same name.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. How could we get that confused?
Right.
Charles, in his research, he was asked, it's really hard to nail down exactly what he thought the Bermuda Triangle was, like what was actually happening there. But he did say at one point in an interview, he said that he thinks that, quote, the people and planes and ships that have reportedly disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle have been victims of some sort of electromagnetic disturbances.
Interesting.
That cause them to disintegrate and fall into the sea.
So to disintegrate, like literally start falling apart?
That was his theory.
Okay.
I'm more interested in the fact that he thinks it's electromagnetic.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
That to me is very cool.
Yeah.
The idea that there's some sort of disturbance that's happening there. And that kind of fits with the electric fog theory that we discussed a little bit earlier. That electric fog, the idea of an electromagnetic disturbance that's happening, that's throwing these instruments off, maybe making people think irrationally because it's affecting their minds.
Panic and make bad decisions.
And very potentially pushing them through time.
Yeah. Well, maybe.
We can hope. He quotes Ivan T. Sanderson in his books, but he does quote somebody else who's very interesting, has a very tenuous connection to the Bermuda Triangle. The one and only Edgar Cayce.
Yeah.
The sleeping prophet. Edgar Cayce. We were talking about Edgar Cayce last night, and the idea that there's not a lot of people who seem to like know much about him. Like he's just around. He's a ton of material has been released about Edgar Cayce.
Yeah, Edgar Cayce has so much material, and he is one of those psychics that sort of get clumped into a category with sort of like all psychics, which is kind of interesting because I think what Edgar Cayce was doing was a little bit different, really interesting.
He was basically channeling.
I think he was just basically channeling.
Because that was his thing. He would have his assistant sit next to him while he went into like a trance and he just sort of like said things.
Yeah.
She would write them down.
They called him a prophet because he would basically just like prophesize, essentially. He would remote view. He would pick up on things from the future and from the past.
You want a very weird connection to Edgar Cayce. Edgar Cayce is from and is buried in Hopkinsville, Kentucky.
He is.
Where the Hopkinsville Goblin attack happened.
Yeah.
Kind of weird that those two because we've been to Hopkinsville. There's not much going on out there.
It is very weird that.
So it's strange.
Yeah, like, Edgar Cayce being one of the most famous psychics on Earth and has kind of continued to be the most famous psychic on Earth. It is very kind of weird that he comes from Hopkinsville, of all places.
All places.
It's so strange.
What's going on in Hopkinsville?
Goblins.
Goblins. Yeah,
Obviously.
for sure, of course.
Goblins.
One of the things that Edgar Casey loved to talk about
Atlantis.
was Atlantis.
He loved to talk about Atlantis.
He had tons of prophecies that were relating to it, and he wasn't necessarily coming at this. We have to, say this. He wasn't coming at this from a place of disappearances. That wasn't really his thing.
Okay.
He was talking more about like a lost civilization that he thought.
Like an ancient lost civilization of man.
Right. And he was talking about Atlantis and the potential location of Atlantis 30 years before most of these disturbances were happening in the Bermuda Triangle that we know of, that were being reported.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that this guy, who was pretty landlocked, middle of Kentucky, the far western side of Kentucky, is having these conversations about weird things that are happening in the same part of the ocean as the Bermuda Triangle, using his ability to peer into the past.
Mm-hmm.
He learned that there was an ancient Atlantean civilization and that this civilization was highly advanced.
Okay.
He believes that it was highly advanced and it was located across the Atlantic Ocean. He said they became aware of the impending doom of their civilization and it would take place in 10,000 BC. So they hid their identical records of Atlantis and its people in Bimini, Egypt, and the Yucatan.
Okay.
Now, Bimini is very interesting because it's basically like the back door of Bermuda. The Bimini Islands are the back door of Bermuda. So somewhere there, Edgar Casey believed these people, this lost race, this ancient advanced civilization.
And he believed it because of sitting and doing like remote viewing sessions.
Dana, you do a little bit of you do a little trance work.
Yeah.
You do a little bit of
do you want me to do my
a little bit of channeling?
Do you want me to try to do a creepy voice?
Do your creepy voice while you read this quote, this reading from Edgar Casey.
Should I do it like Corton?
Yes, you should.
The one in Atlantean land that sank, which will rise and is rising again. Another in place of the records that leadeth from the Sphinx to the Hall records. There
Very
you go.
good. That was creepy.
Yeah.
That was creepy. So in 1938,
Yeah.
Edgar Casey predicted that the Atlantean records for constructing energy crystals, which he believed were the power source, they were the power source of whatever Atlantean civilization was there.
Sure.
Special crystals.
Yeah.
He believed that these would be discovered near Bimini in 1968 or 1969. Crazy. It sounds crazy. Like it's crazy stuff, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's nuts to sit here and say that it's not completely insane for someone to be talking about crystals having like
powered crystals in the lost city of Atlantis.
It sounds bonkers.
I found the language of that particular prophecy too.
Oh, you
if
did?
You want to read that?
Go ahead, read that one, Dana.
A portion of the temple may yet be discovered under the slime of ages and sea water near Bimini, expected in 68 or 69, not so far away.
Pretty creepy.
Yeah. So
but also crazy, right?
Yeah. I mean,
nuts.
Also,
there's no possible way that there was like a Atlantean civilization, right?
Well, I mean, do you watch Ancient Aliens, Greg? Because apparently you're wrong. It depends on who you ask. It really does, and it depends on how much you're willing to get into the weeds.
Right. I think that one of the things that we always have to be careful of is we have to be careful about how things are interpreted by people.
Sure.
And different people from different time periods, they look at things differently.
Yeah.
And maybe there's this guy who, like, he's from Kentucky, has limited knowledge of a lot of things, and he's giving these ostensibly prophecies, right? That something about this lost civilization is going to be discovered near Bermuda, Bimini, in like 68 or 69.
Yeah.
So that's very specific, which means if Edgar Casey was full of shit, we would know that now, right?
I think probably.
Yeah.
So we did a little digging to see, like, has anybody found Atlantis off of, Bimini? Have they found it? Guess what? This keeps happening to us. This happened to us when we did the Lemuria episode 2.
They did.
Damn it.
What did they find, Connor, in 1968?
1968, the remains of what's come to be known as the Bimini Road was found. A mysterious, seemingly man-made road underwater.
Yeah.
Off the coast of Bimini, which, to be fair to Edgar Casey, is the tiniest island I've ever seen. I mean, it is tiny.
That's crazy, right?
In the middle of the ocean. And he said that they're going to find something out there in 1968. In 1968, archaeologists discovered the remains of the Bimini Road.
It is a 15. Listen to what this is. We'll put some pictures of this on screen.
It's pretty cool to see.
I mean, there's an argument that this could be a natural formation, but come the on.
Here's the thing. This is pretty talked about subject matter, specifically when it comes to sort of fringy paranormal television shows.
Sure.
They love talking about this kind of, specifically, they love talking about Bimini. I think it's very interesting. It's very cool. And it's very neat to speculate about. It looks very interesting.
It looks very man-made.
It does. It really does.
1,500-foot long layer of limestone square rocks that are laid together in the pattern of like a road.
Yeah, if you've never seen them, if you're just listening to the audio, it's not a bad idea to take a peek. They're kind of strange. And here's the thing, they're neat to look at.
There's a lot of debate still among geologists and archaeologists as to whether it's natural or not.
And we should say, I mean, there are a lot of natural formations that look very like mathematically straight. They look, there are things like, there's those coasts in Scotland, right?
In Scotland, there's places in, I think, Sweden that look very similar, very like intense, sharp, jagged lines, things that you don't normally see in nature.
Yes.
You're not normally seeing very straight lines.
What is this? What is the, it's in Prometheus. God doesn't build in straight lines or something like that. Not necessarily true. There's a lot of straight lines in nature. But this one looks so specifically like a road. The square blocks, they lock together. If you're watching the video podcast, you see it on screen.
It's also very large. And that's something that I think is very interesting. There's always you always see videos of people like snorkeling above them or scuba diving past them. And it really does look like a massive road that would have led to a large city. I don't want to say that, but it does look like a big, large road. Like it looks like a road leading somewhere.
Like I'll say this. I think it is like naturally formed. Maybe it just breaks off that way.
Yeah.
But Edgar Cayce still predicted that they would find something.
Yeah, and here's the thing.
That's a good point, Connor.
And here's the other thing. Maybe if Edgar Cayce was looking at it at his time, he would have looked at that in a remote viewing session and gone, that's a big road. Like that's what he would have thought it was.
Maybe he was like psychic questing and he sees it.
See, here's the thing. When I do remote viewing, sometimes I say the dumbest things and I talk about places that like are not really potentially they're not really real places. There's like symbology.
You see them in your mind's eye and they're meant to be deciphered.
Yeah, so I think there's a way that we can kind of go, like, it's very cool and very interesting that Edgar Cayce prophesized that something like this would be found, right? That doesn't mean that it was found. It means that a guy who was psychic in the 30s saw a big old road and jumped to a conclusion.
That's a great point. I think that's a great sort of like, that splits the difference, I think.
But I think it also gives us a little bit of room to say, like, listen, maybe psychic ability is something that's possible. It's just a discernment process that we utilize when we have that information.
Great point.
Yeah.
With that in mind,
there
was a geologist went to carbon date it because it's really weird. Like there's even, regardless of what you think about it, it's genuinely mysterious. People want to figure out what this thing is. Is it man-made?
It's cool.
Because it could be a massive, like archaeological discovery.
For sure.
Right? So there's a geologist that went to go check it out. Geologist Eugene Shin showed up to carbon date it. And we should say too, like most people believe that it's
naturally made.
It's a natural occurrence, right? Most geologists, right?
I think a lot of, absolutely.
Here's a quote. This is what he wrote about what happened when he showed up to carbon date it. This is just worth including. I think it's
very fair.
Half a dozen sailboats had already assembled at the site when we dropped anchor. Shin recalled of his trip to the site. The people on the sailboats had dropped more than their anchors. They were all naked. One nude boater swam over and asked, "Can you feel the force field? It's strong here." Apparently, some New Age writers had claimed that nudity was a requirement for feeling whatever supposed energy was being emitted by Bimini Road's stones.
I mean, do you know how many people get naked up on Mount Shasta and just run around in the woods?
There's some pervert out there with binoculars writing books about how you have to be naked to see Bigfoot or whatever. Yeah. And like just sitting there going,
get your taters out.
It's a whole new crew showing up today. Good scam.
Eugene pulls up with his scientific equipment.
Eugene's like, what the is going on here?
Geologist Eugene Shin.
It sounds like an 80s like boner comedy where it's like Eugene's like, I'm here to study the road, and all these like topless babes are like, get in the water with us, Eugene. Why do you have to do nerd stuff all the time?
They were sirens.
Yeah. Oh,
So they were there
from
to-
Atlantis.
They were there to call him into the inky waters.
Into the Atlantean waters.
And you know what? You know what he said?
I have a job to do. I need to carbon date these rocks.
Ladies, please. I will get my equipment wet.
yeah. This is very
they're like,
expensive.
Yeah, you will. my watch is 10 minutes fast.
Ladies, please.
This poor guy.
This
we're just
equipment is very
absolutely.
calibrated right now.
He's probably a very smart
I know. I'm sorry, Eugene.
guy. Sorry, Eugene. Shout out Eugene Shin.
Shout out, Eugene.
Do you wish you could have weekly episodes of the Haunted Objects podcast? If so, you're in luck because we just launched Museum Mailbag, a companion show where we dive deep into previous episodes' topics, answer your questions about the unexplained, and reveal the secrets of the universe.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. The only way to get the show is to become a member of the Newkirk Museum of the Paranormal. Becoming a member doesn't just support the show, it also gives you access to monthly live-streamed adventures and experiments with us.
In a magical monthly subscription box with live classes about the occult and witchcraft with me.
Plus, you'll get downloadable goodies, exclusive merch, and more.
To join the museum and get your weekly dose of the Haunted Objects podcast and so much more, join us at patreon.com/paramuseum.
Okay, so before we get into solving this for ourselves, we'll tell you, if you're listening to this podcast, if you made it this far, you're going to find out what we've discovered at the end of this podcast.
We're doing
but
it.
we need to talk about what other people
Yes.
have thought is the explanation. All of these other silly ideas, both skeptic and believers, their ideas about what's actually happening.
Yes.
We're going to start with one of my favorites.
Okay.
This is something that was written about by both Donald Kehoe and Ivan T. Sanderson. The idea that UFOs are abducting people, extraterrestrial entities are plucking people from the Bermuda Triangle.
So they have a perfect spot
yeah.
where they can just yoink people
Nobody's
out
out
of
there. Maybe they're
existence.
hiding in the electric fog.
I mean, the clouds. Yeah, exactly.
They might be. So the idea they're not. The ships aren't on the bottom of the ocean at all.
Oh.
They're being
yes.
in the
Which
other
is why
direction.
we can't find them.
Yeah.
Interesting.
They're not down there. They're
up there.
So
Whoa.
that's one explanation. And that's an explanation that a lot of people really like. They like that idea.
Yeah.
You know who would have read that explanation? Betty Hill.
Yes.
Oh, that's right.
It's in the Flying Saucer Conspiracy,
That's
You're
so
right.
which is one of
interesting.
my favorite old-timey UFO book covers.
Oh, it's
Love
a great
that cover.
cover.
And Donald Kehoe in it talks about how Flight 19 was plucked out of the sky by a UFO.
And that was the book that Betty Hill read, right?
Yeah.
So Betty Hill, wondering what was going on to her, goes to the library, finds this book on UFOs
And
where
there
they're
it
talking
is.
about people being plucked
Out.
of the ocean into the sky. Huh.
Kind of weird where that came from, I
Yeah.
wonder.
Kind of weird that happened. Why would they be doing that? I
Yeah.
do think it is interesting when you talk about the people who go missing on some of these ships. There were animals left behind.
Yeah.
So it was only people that could talk, things that could speak,
Interesting.
that were being taken.
Yeah, and like as we know, because we've heard about it all the entire episode, like none of these ships had anything really missing from it except for people.
the people.
Like we're talking ships full of booze and food and all sorts of things that at that time people, I mean, especially if you're on a boat.
Yeah.
If you don't have access to that,
Oh, yeah.
you would be psyched out of your mind if you found a boat that was full of all that stuff. And none of it, for the most part, in any of the cases we've talked about, and none of that stuff was missing. In fact, one of the boats they just kept using afterwards.
Oh, that's true.
So that's kind of interesting.
Donald Kehoe wrote in the Flying Saucer Conspiracy that the planes were literally grabbed out of the sky.
Yeah.
Even Berlitz wrote, the number of sightings have given rise to theories that the presence of UFOs has something to do with the disappearances, rather that UFOs have been hijacking planes and ships for generations.
What's the motivation, though?
That's the thing. Let's talk about that for a second. The
Yeah.
motivation. Why would they only be taking people that can talk, for one? That's interesting. Human beings seem to be the only things that disappear. Every once in a while, like the whole ship goes. But in those occasions where there are living creatures still on
There's
board,
a
they're
lot of
not
animals.
humans.
Yeah.
What's the deal? Do they need humanoid entities?
I mean, maybe.
Maybe.
If this is the case, let's say they are using this as a spot to sort of abduct people. Maybe there's something easier about. Maybe there's something from, the electromagnetic spectrum that we don't necessarily know quite enough about. I don't know. Maybe they need to talk to people. Maybe they need to communicate with people. They want to know more about what we have to say.
Maybe someday, much like in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, we will make contact with extraterrestrials. The ship doors will open up and out will walk the crew of the Mary Celeste.
Yeah.
It might happen.
Yeah.
Ivan T. Sanderson had another idea, though.
Ivan Sanderson had a really interesting idea where he theorized that they were being taken because they were hurting the environment. So if you look at like the Cyclops, for example, it's carrying tons of coal and like ore. And like he's like, well, these mineral ships aren't supposed to be around. So they pluck them up when they see them and they can.
I like that explanation.
Kind of interesting.
I think the reason Ivan T. Sanderson had that idea that he had about like why they're taking pollutants or people that are polluting things. He was like a naturalist.
Yeah,
he was very interested in nature. He wrote a lot about nature.
Aren't there also a lot of stories of Bigfoot doing the same thing? Like people polluting and destroying the planet.
I mean, the first Bigfoot stuff happened when they were building a highway.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
it's an interesting.
In the middle of the woods.
It's an interesting theory, sort of saving us from ourselves. Like they know better because we are, we don't.
Yeah. Stop being bad caretakers of the planet.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying to us.
Care about your
Travis
planet.
Walton was logging.
He was logging. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe there is something to that.
Weird.
Yeah.
All
Did
right.
we just inadvertently?
Well, that could be.
Okay.
That could be. That is one particular idea. There is another idea that kind of falls between that sort of area between the conspiratorial and the ufological. There is another place that's considered the Navy's Area 51. That is near the Bahamas. It's called AWTEC. It stands for the Atlantic Undersea Testing and Evaluation Center. It's a place where they do a lot of different sort of like top secret tests and underwater testing of like submarine communication equipment, like things like that. The conspiracy theorists refer to it as the Navy's Area 51.
So instead of the sky, it's the sea.
It's the sea.
That's cool.
And the episode of UFO Hunters that we watched with the extreme old man close-ups. Yeah. That
they were really doing those dudes dirty. I'm not
undersell.
Stop cruising in so close.
Close-ups.
And all the shows are on. It's such an affront.
I know.
Because it's like always a white background on these shows, and they're like staring directly in the camera.
Directly center camera, full face in the frame.
And it's an alarming cut always.
It's not great.
It's an alarming cut directly to like a 65-year-old man's face.
We'll link the episode in the show notes. Go just check it out. We'll give you a timestamp of one of the extreme close-ups, and you tell us if we're overreacting.
Yeah, it was shocking. I'm not going to
lie. When we watched that episode, they were talking about AWTEC and thinking that AWTEC, and wasn't there a conclusion that they found a cable?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but wait.
They found a cable.
Well, they walked up to the front and tried to get in, and the military didn't talk to them. Was like, no.
Can you imagine if we did
like,
that?
We've called an email. I mean, you've done it at Area 51.
We have.
But we didn't knock on the door.
We are smart enough to know not to do that. We've seen the white trucks. They do not mess around.
We'll head up to Right Pat, or just up the road, you and I, and we'll walk right up to the gates, and we'll be like, you need to show us what's in Hangar 8, please.
What's going on at the Bermuda Triangle?
Yeah.
Ask them.
Okay.
All right.
Next live stream. But then the next live stream, Craig and Connor get tased.
Yeah. The next live stream is me bailing you guys out of jail.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, we can't get to it from the land side, so they go to it from the water side. And they dive like at the border of where they can. And when they dive, they saw a cable.
They did see a cable.
Wow.
I mean,
evidence.
And it went way underwater.
Wasn't the conclusion that they were using it to siphon, the aliens were using it to siphon power to their underwater base or something?
It was theorized.
I love the idea that like they've got this extra large extension cable that they have like leading out of the ocean. They have it plugged in behind some 7-Eleven somewhere. They're like, no one knows what this cable's for.
E.T. is stealing cable.
Yeah,
is what's happening.
He's stealing
tapped
energy.
in.
Yeah.
Yep. He needs to watch Impractical Jokers.
Could be communications. Could be
anything.
They didn't
Well, it's
know.
definitely aliens. We know that.
Yeah.
Which leads me to the next idea about what this potentially could be. It could be not UFOs.
Yeah.
Could be USOs.
Yeah.
Underwater ships, underwater.
Unidentified underwater ships.
Yeah.
Underwater ship object.
I was trying to figure that out.
You're so used to saying unidentified flying objects that your brain was like, what are you trying to say right now?
Yeah, no. It's unidentified submerged
Oh, okay.
object.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's the things that happen in the bathroom upstairs, the Bermuda bathroom.
Yeah. The Bermuda bathroom where your poops disappear.
Dropping a few USOs.
You got a toddler in the bathtub and we got some USOs in here.
Exactly.
It's funny, we're laughing about this, but the Navy has released videos.
Yeah.
That show things coming out of the water. So you never know. I mean, wasn't that the Tic Tac thing? That was they were saying it was coming out of the water.
The Tic Tac came out of the water and was seen under the water by the pilots as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they did say they saw it.
Under the water, right under the surface, and then it zipped back out and shot across the sky again.
I mean, when you think about it, we've talked about it on the show. There's parts of the ocean that literally are so deep. You can't. There's probably things down there we haven't even discovered yet because they're just doing their thing in places where we just haven't been yet.
It's kind of funny because life in space is its own thing, and it's but it's also how harsh is space.
Sure.
Yeah.
But we live on a planet of abundant life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we're not looking as hard
I know.
underneath the waves.
Well, I was telling you when we were going over the notes for this, and we were looking at we were looking at a big map of the world, right? And I think it was the Vile Vortices map we were looking at the other day
from Connor's Corner.
The Vile Vortices sounds like an awesome roller derby group.
Ooh.
Of here come the Vile Vortices.
It really does.
Does that sound awesome?
Yeah. Well,
all right, take it.
As mentioned in Connor's Corner.
Yeah.
We were looking at a big map of the Vile Vortices, and it unnerved me to be able to see this overhead satellite map of the seafloor.
Yeah.
Because you can see, particularly in places like the Gulf of Mexico, you can see where there's kind of that sea shelf that comes out, and it doesn't look terribly deep, and then all of a sudden it's just dark.
Nothing.
There's nothing down there.
It's an abyss.
It's unsettling. So there's a lot of stuff down there that we've never seen, and we might not see for a long time, because that, the bottom of the sea in and of itself is the very harsh environment.
Incredibly harsh. Yeah.
But USOs, who knows what's down there? At the time of recording this, people are freaking out about drones in New Jersey, saying that they're coming out of the water, right? So maybe there's something down there. Those are the weirdo explanations, aside from, the electric fog that you end up traveling through time or whatever, right?
Yeah, it's fair.
That's the thing. We know the ships aren't on the water, so they're either under the water or up in the sky.
Yeah, they're one. Yeah, exactly.
Something happened.
That's
the simplest explanation. Yep, there we go.
It's up there, or it's down there. That's the only options.
Or they could be poofed out somewhere else, I guess.
My favorite of the skeptic explanations, though, the one that actually
it's your
gets
favorite?
me. No. This isn't the one.
Okay.
My favorite of the skeptic explanations I love, and it's the fact that Bermuda itself is a geomagnetic anomaly.
Yes.
This, I think, is cool, and because it kind of ties into the stuff that people have experienced there, where the electric fog comes from, right? The idea that when people are in that area, they talk about their instrumentation not working correctly, their compasses are spinning. Guess what? You might not know this if you don't research this, but that's a legitimate thing that people are experiencing. That's not a tall tale. That's not something that people are exaggerating.
No, people actually have experienced this.
And the reason is because Bermuda is made out of magnetite.
Yeah.
There's a ton of magnetite because Bermuda is the tip of an underwater volcano. And so volcanoes spit out tons of magnetite. And magnetite, naturally, when you get near it, disrupts things like electromagnetic waves.
Or a compass.
A compass will spin. There's actual videos of scientists going out to the shores of Bermuda near the rocks, and their compasses will spin.
Yeah.
It is something that most people who do flights into there or ships that sail into there, they know that this happens and they adjust for it. These days, past the 70s, 80s, it's not as much of a big deal because everybody's navigation equipment, it has fail-safes. They check GPS stuff. They measure it against other things. So if for some reason their normal, compass isn't working, they have plenty of other high-tech ways to get around that. So that might be why we don't see as much of that today.
Sure.
But it is a legitimate, weird anomaly that happens in and around Bermuda.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it explains the island itself.
Yeah.
And if you look at our map that we made, a lot of stuff did happen around that island.
Absolutely.
Doesn't necessarily explain the middle of the ocean.
Sure.
but
you know
that's
what? Maybe
kinda where
getting
it's
near
focused
it
anyway.
screws your instrumentation up,
Yeah.
and then it just stays that way, and you end up flying into the middle of the ocean.
Mhm.
That could be. I like that one personally, as far as like skeptical arguments go.
I think it's really reasonable.
Yeah. Of course, there is one
Yeah.
that is
Nightmare
kind
fuel.
of scary when you think about it.
It's equal parts hilarious, equal parts terrifying, and it is ocean farts.
It is a real thing.
It's a real thing, folks.
Ocean farts.
Ocean farts.
It is methane gas.
Yeah. But big bubbles of methane blasting out of the ocean.
Scientists theorize that the way this is working, because they just happen randomly,
Yeah.
is that
Like your normal ones.
Methane is yeah, sure. Methane
It happens after the ocean eats a lot
of beans. Beans, good for your heart. The more you eat beans, the more likely you are to disappear in the Bermuda Triangle.
Is that how the rhyme goes? Oh, okay.
Is it good for your heart or good for your poop?
Beans,
It's
good for your heart. The more you eat beans, the more you fart.
The more you fart, the better you feel.
I thought it was
That's why you eat beans with every meal.
The more you fart, the better you feel.
Beans, the magical fruit. The more you eat, the more you
poop.
toot. The more you toot.
Toot.
The more you
Toot makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
Has someone been training you wrong?
Yeah, I guess so.
Are the Randall siblings playing a trick on you?
This happens a lot.
My life is a lie.
Michelle's at home just crossing Bermuda or farts. Yeah.
He said it publicly on a podcast.
He did it. Got him.
Got him. No, this is a real thing, though.
Yeah.
Sea farts are a real thing.
They are.
And they're terrifying.
They are terrifying.
Scientists
They can capsize a whole ass ship.
Scientists believe that what happens is because of the immense pressure at the bottom of the ocean, when methane escapes through the ocean floor, it forms like a sheet, almost like ice, because it's compressed, right?
Yeah, because isn't it kind of also a sort of solid in a way? Like it's so cold.
Yeah, it becomes like super frozen and cold.
Yeah.
So they're almost like sheets of underwater methane ice.
So it's a fart icicle kind of that explodes out of the ocean.
It's a fartsicle.
It's a fartsicle.
It's a natural fartsicle that forms and then breaks off. And as it rises and starts to float to the top, it becomes less and less pressurized. So it starts to kind of melt and form these gigantic bubbles.
Yeah.
That by the time it hits the top of the surface, if you are a ship that is near or over top this thing, it basically will just go
and blow you up.
Your boat just does this. Wow.
Yeah, capsize you, blow you up.
Yeah.
That's so scary.
You can be killed by an earth fart.
By earth farts, which is again equal parts hilarious.
God, can you imagine what an embarrassing way to go?
It would suck. That would really not be fun.
Maybe what we're trying to say here is that mysterious disappearances can be hilarious.
If farts are involved, unfortunately, yes.
That one scares me a little
Yeah.
bit. That's definitely a frightening one.
It's a scary thing, and I think it's the randomness of it. Like, you know, you could be on a cruise ship just relaxing, and then you're blasted up in the air by an earth fart.
There are more mundane, skeptical arguments,
Yes.
which like they're not as fun, but it's basically just human error.
Yeah.
There are a lot of what they call like pleasure captains, right? We were talking about that earlier.
Mhm.
What?
Pleasure captains.
Pleasure captains.
Don't do the hand gesture, Greg.
I don't know why I just associated pleasure
Carl
captains
is going to
with
zoom right into that hand gesture.
It made everybody uncomfortable.
Pleasure captains.
Yeah, the question is, one of the other remaining mysteries is, were those farts that you heard on the soundboard or were they real?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of human explanations as well. Sorry about that.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah. So there's, they could be like just bad record keeping, people who don't know their instrumentation.
I
just
mean,
like
the weather is, potentially random. Like you said, you can't always predict what it's going to be like. You might have people that are flying that aren't as, seasoned as other people. And it makes sense that like you have to consider human error in that.
If you're island hopping, that's hard to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like your target's really small. I mean,
Yep.
if you're an amateur pilot flying in America, at least you can land on the highway.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
You don't really
There's
have an
nothing
option.
out there.
Yeah.
You got to navigate it properly.
Yeah. Why are you laughing?
I'm just laughing because I didn't say like pleasure captains. I said, what did I, or not pleasure pilots. I said pleasure captains.
That's why I was laughing.
Dana, you're my pleasure captain.
Thanks.
You wearing the
I'm
hat?
wearing the hat.
Okay, so those are some of the boring explanations for it.
Sure.
But if you want a lot of boring explanations,
If you want more than one in a boring explanation in a row.
every single boring explanation possible, you need to read a book titled "The Bermuda Triangle Mystery Solved." This is I'm joking, but it's a good book because it's got a lot of every single chapter is basically a rebuke of Charles Berlitz.
Yeah.
Every chapter is just like, here's a story Charles Berlitz told. Here's what actually happened.
What really
and here's all the
happened.
evidence to back it up.
Yeah.
There's people who do that to Missing 411.
Sure.
We talk about Missing 411 is sort of the new Bermuda Triangle.
Yes,
right?
it
It's
is.
as if humans have to have these kinds of stories in their culture for some reason.
Yeah, they love it in the folklore.
It was the Bermuda Triangle up until some point in the 90s. And then
Sure.
it became missing in the National Forest.
Yeah.
We're going to collect those stories now too. And that
Yes.
became Missing 411, which is its own questionable.
I mean, here's the
source.
thing.
And so-
There's a lot of people who have found that a lot of the people in those books are literally just alive, living out their lives. I mean, they've been discovered again.
I'm fairly certain there's podcasts where people are just
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So there's evidence out
And
there.
whatever, if that's your bag, whatever, go nuts. But
the point is, it's the legend
Yes.
of missing people
Yes.
Yeah.
that goes viral
Yeah. People are always very
for some
interested
reason.
in it.
Yeah. The
So anyway.
1970s version being Charles Berlitz selling bajillion books to
Yes.
everybody's uncle and grandma.
It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
now it's the same, which is, it is like you were saying, it's almost like I don't know what other term would be, like a gateway drug to the paranormal.
It
where you're
is.
suddenly now you step there 1st
Mm-hmm.
and then you get into UFOs.
Yeah.
And then you get
Yes.
into, so it's the Bermuda Triangle is an intro.
It's sort of it's the gateway drug. It gets you in there. It's the first thing that a normal person might be like, well, I'm kind of interested in that. And then they read one book and they're like, all right, now I have to learn about UFOs. Now I have to learn about, and it just sort of
Sure.
pipelines you into all of these different sort of spaces.
Sure. Well, if you need to kick those drugs,
Yeah.
read this book
Yeah,
by
if you-
Larry Kusch, The Bermuda Triangle Mystery Solved, the definitive new bestseller that rips the lid off the legend for both the doubters and the believers. It's got 16 pages of photographs.
He wrote that in the 70s.
Oh,
A
Wow.
few years after the Berlitz book came out.
So he was really sick of
he was
hearing
on
about
it.
the bullshit. Yeah.
No.
Incorrect.
Very quickly. Him and Eugene probably got along.
I
great.
bet they did.
yeah. And we're kind of joking about this book, but it's a great book.
Yeah.
It has a lot of potential answers to
Yes.
things that have been
Yeah.
they've been mysterious for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, it's not just Lawrence David Cush who ended up coming to these conclusions. There's actually a very big insurance company
Yeah.
that's known for insuring things like ships and planes and,
Stuff.
rich people stuff
Yeah.
all the time. Lloyd's of London came out. According to their records, they said that 428 vessels have been reported missing throughout the world since 1955. And it may interest you to know that our intelligence service can find no evidence to support the claim that the Bermuda Triangle has more losses than anywhere else.
Wow. So they have statistics, which is useful. They
Well,
can
they're
look
an
at
insurance
those.
company.
Yeah, and they've got a large number of statistics that they
Yes.
can look at and go, well,
They said their finding is upheld by the United States Coast Guard, whose computer-based records of casualties in the Atlantic go all the way back to 1958. So in 1975, during the height of Bermuda Triangle craziness, Lloyd's of London came out and said, well, we're an insurance company. We insure a lot of these really expensive boats and ships and things like that. We keep very good records about all of the disappearances of these things because we're the ones paying it out. And they can tell you there is nothing happening in the Bermuda Triangle that isn't happening anywhere else.
interesting.
Which means we must be very careful to not run into electric fog.
Yeah.
Because what they're saying is that electric fog is everywhere.
And that it's cruising around the ocean.
There's USOs up in, the Great Lakes. They see them all the time coming out of the Great Lakes. So they're there too. They're not just in the Bermuda Triangle.
Interesting.
There is, UFO sightings. Abductions are happening everywhere. You never know. It might not just be the Bermuda Triangle. The reason is somebody gave it a catchy name.
Yeah.
They wrote a few cool articles about it. And then suddenly, it is the most mysterious thing. People love it. There's triangles everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Now. And it happened because of the Bermuda Triangle. You have the Bridgewater Triangle. You have the Alaskan Triangle we were talking about the other day. They pop up everywhere.
The the Devil's Triangle.
Near Japan.
Near Japan it's another big one.
Yep.
About the vile vortices, which pops up a lot. So, what is it about triangles? The number 3? Is that just a particular exciting thing?
Hang on one second, Connor. Your camera just turned off.
Yeah, dude.
That's weird. Shouldn't do that.
Why'd it do that?
It's never done that before.
Plugged in.
It's not electrical interference, is it?
Oh no, it's the electric fog. Do we with the electric fog?
Weird.
Is it just the monitor, maybe?
No. I watched it turn off.
Yeah.
Because I can see the back of Connor's camera. I can see the screen. And I watched it just suddenly go
I saw it out of the corner of my eye. It turned black. It just happened. Okay.
Electric fog.
Whoa.
We were just saying it could happen anywhere.
Literally, it just happened.
And it just happened.
This is the Bermuda Triangle's way of being like, I can go anywhere. Anywhere.
The Bermuda Triangle is coming for you.
We're making an enemy out of the Bermuda Triangle.
You want to know who the Bermuda Triangle is actually coming for? The state of Georgia. Because...
Good segue.
Magnets, the way the magnetic north is literally moving, like something like 30 miles to the northwest every year. Like, like the way it's changing. And so if that's what it has to do something with the magnets, then it's probably literally moving. So if you're in Georgia, the Bermuda Triangle is coming for you.
Oh no.
You heard it, Georgians. Watch out.
You're going to be in trouble.
You're in trouble.
But does all of this make the Bermuda Triangle not cool anymore?
No, I don't think so at all.
I don't think so. I think that the Bermuda Triangle itself sort of captures a time period of paranormal weirdness, like in the culture. I think it sort of, it makes me think of a time period. Honestly, it was one of the very first paranormal like stories that I ever heard as a child. I have a real fondness for it, but it's got like a good 80s, 70s kind of vibe to it.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? We talk about like the Bermuda Triangle being a gateway to the paranormal. That doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing.
No, that's not a bad thing at all.
It can be a good thing. It makes you wonder about what's going on in the world.
Exactly.
And you know what the Bermuda Triangle has done? It has gotten a lot of very creative people to try and go out and solve a mystery.
Yeah.
They've tried to figure out what's actually going on in these places.
Yeah, and they've found some interesting things along the way.
They absolutely have. We've learned more about the world because of it. You know, it can go either direction. I know for me, you know, when we had the opportunity to go to Bermuda, like everybody's talking about the beaches. They're talking about like lounging in the sun. We were there when there was like a big boat regatta happening and people were like stoked on it. There was like a music festival or something. And all that Dana and I cared about was, we're in the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
It was spooky.
I had to go buy a t-shirt that said I survived the Bermuda Triangle. Like, I love that.
I don't know if you remember, but the day at sea, because to get to Bermuda, it's an interesting thing because you have a few days where you don't leave the boat. Because it's a long way to get there.
People are going to think we're really into cruises.
Yeah, this was a paranormal cruise. We were there as speakers. But I need to say though, when we were doing the trip, I believe back from Bermuda, heading back to the States, we did it through fog.
Oh, we did. And it was scary.
It was thick fog. All of the windows, even looking outside, it was like the thickest fog I've ever seen in my life. And I literally was like, is this bad?
It's hard not to feel, like weird about it after all that you've read.
It's kind of spooky.
But it was cool. We got to go there. Cool. We pulled a piece of wreckage out of it that mysteriously disappeared.
It's somewhere here. In here.
I cannot believe we could not find the wreckage.
I know.
It's crazy.
We'll find it.
But the Bermuda Triangle, I think, like you said, it speaks to a particular moment in time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that it inspired to think differently, to go out, to have adventures, and to think differently and teach a whole generation to think differently too. Because if the paranormal is about anything, if mystery is about anything, it's about the possibilities and thinking about what could possibly be happening there. And it's, sometimes it is not the easiest answer. Sometimes it is weirder than that. Well, now that we've talked about what everybody else thinks is happening in the Bermuda Triangle, it's time for us to give you our discovery.
Yeah.
We have made a discovery that is so unbelievable. It is poised to change the way that people discuss the Bermuda Triangle. Is there...
Just a second. I lost audio feed. One moment. Oh, it sounds weird. You hear that?
Yeah, it sounds
What
like
is that?
static.
Does anybody else's skin feel tingly?
My hair's standing up.
Yeah, what's going on?
I don't know.
Is it? It's not foggy in here, is it?
It looks a little foggy. I see fog.
What's... let's just keep going.
Okay.
Let's just keep going. There's very important information. We need to get this information out to the masses.
All right.
It's going to change the way that everybody sees the Bermuda Triangle. It is definitively solved. The Planet Weird gang has officially solved the Bermuda Triangle. Can you...
There's a second. If I were to find... Can we hold just for audio, just for 1 minute?
What is that noise? You hear that noise?
Wait, where's the Gernon scale? Did we talk about the Gernon scale? Electric fog?
The way that this works is this relates to Gernon's fog. The electric...
There's 5 scales of the electric fog. I don't know if you guys can hear us, but we're going to keep talking about it. 5 scales of the electric fog. Number 1, it just appears as a mist or a haze. 2 and 3 miles of visibility. But number 2 is when things start to get a little bit crazy. Do you hear that?
Do you hear?
I can't. It's like a buzzing.
I can't even see.
There's like a buzzing.
Is there? Look at the fog in here.
Connor, do you have a...
Can you hear me?
Is there a... You have a compass over there?
What?
You do have a compass. That's signed by Josh Gates. What's going on? I can barely see you. Connor, I can't even see you.
It's spinning madly. It's spinning out of control.
What is the... Did that light just go out?
Yeah. Hello?
Listen, before this thing gets any worse, any more of our equipment starts to shut off, the secret to the Bermuda Triangle is that it completely surrounds the aircraft with the exception of 2 shafts, one above and one below. Visibility near 0 in the front and unlimited magnetic navigational equipment with navigational equipment after a period of time. Connor! Dana! Hello? Hello? What's going on? I can't see anybody. All I hear is static. It's the electric fog. Oh my God, it's the electric fog! I don't know what happened to Connor.
No.
But at least the blender still works. Cheers.
Cheers.
That's why the Bermuda Triangle is a haunted object.
The Haunted Objects podcast is hosted by Greg and Dana Newkirk, produced by Connor J. Randall, with cinematography and editing by Carl Pfeiffer, and features exclusive artifacts from the Newkirk Museum of the Paranormal. To learn more about the artifacts featured in this episode, take part in live interactive experiments, and enjoy exclusive Haunted Objects content, become a museum member at patreon.com/paramuseum. This has been a Planet Weird production for Spectre Vision Radio.
Guys?